talking about, when we speak about the partition, we are always speaking about, in a collective sense, the rebuilding process. What gets left behind is the unmaking of homes, the unmaking of community, the unmaking of emotions. So I'm just going to quote this from Gyanendra Pandey in Remembering Partition, where he says, "How much violence and intolerance has it taken to produce the successful nation states of the 20th century? How many partitions did it take to make the partition of 1947? Sam, how do you understand the collectiveness of partition and its unmaking?"
Partition is, firstly, thank you everyone for coming. This is, as Dr. was saying, one hell of an audience. Partition is the central event, one of the central events of the 20th century, and certainly the central event of 20th century South Asia. And I think that, I think it was Aisha Jalal who said that it remains the prison through which a quarter of the world's population continues to perceive its past, present, and future, the way that India interacts with its neighbours, the way that Hindu and Muslim populations in the world interact with one another. And what's extraordinary about it is the sheer breadth of partition experience. I think we're going to get into this a bit later, but the fact, I think we often limit it to the border regions that were themselves ruptured, where we can see that dividing line on the map, the regions that bestride border, like Punjab, Gujarat, Sindh, Bengal. But one of the things that I think triggered me to write the book that I did was actually speaking with people who had migrated often from places that we don't associate with partition at all, learning about the Tamil community of Tamil Muslims that now lives in Karachi, or meeting families that now live in Tripura that migrated from Bangladesh. And the fact that I think the major thing that triggered me to write my book was learning that Tripura in northeast India is actually the state that is linguistically and demographically changed the most as a result of partition, and yet we very rarely refer to it when talking about partition. And the way that these composite identities were destroyed, not just the kind of ones that tend to be highlighted in the media and the movies you can see in the books that we read. But I think that one of the things that I found fascinating but tragic is how almost every part of the subcontinent you can go to, and there will be some, Gurudwara that's been abandoned as the family moved to India, or a mosque that's been abandoned in India that represents a community who now lives in Karachi. It's very, once you start looking for it, it's everywhere. You can't go to Humayun's tomb in Delhi without sort of seeing the fact that this was one of the largest refugee camps in partition, despite the fact that it's all a pristine UNESCO World Heritage Site, and we all, the Mughal heritage of the region is always highlighted. The fact that much of these Delhi monuments that we now go and visit were once the refugee camps for the largest forced migration in history. And so, yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
I have to say I'm one of those guilty ones who's also written on Punjab partition and, focused on that, which is something that, you've been involved with as well. Why do you think there was so much emphasis that came to this side and this partition?
Well, to begin with, thank you everybody who's here today. It's a huge step forward from when we started our work in setting up the museums in Amritsar and Delhi. Because at that time, we needed to set up the world's first partition museum, and nobody understood it. I mean, what were we going to do? Why were we making this museum at all? And the importance of it. So even our outreach programs were all about sensitizing people and telling them that this was a world-changing event. It wasn't just an event which impacted the 20 million who moved from here to there, from there to here. And it wasn't just the lives that were lost, it wasn't just about the violence, but the long-lasting impact the partition in 1947 had on many of our lives. And I can tell you, even looking at this audience, that almost everybody here will know someone who's been impacted by the partition, if not within their own families, but somewhere maybe outside. So when we started looking at the Partition Museum, setting it up, it was a huge dilemma where to set it, because we were looking at Delhi, as Sam and Joseph just mentioned, all the monuments and everything were representative of what had happened to Delhi during the partition of India when they became refugee camps. But apart from that, as we did our research, we realized that all of Delhi was like one large refugee camp. And the first exhibition we did in Delhi, we actually put those dots, out on the map of Delhi to show where those refugee camps had existed. So everything, whether you look at a Lajpat Nagar, whether you look at a Friends colony, whether anything from the poorest area to the most luxurious parts of Delhi, Khan Market, all of these were refugee camps once upon a time because there were huge influx of refugees who came. I don't think, Jyotsna, that we were focused on one side of the story. We were not, because though my parents came from Lahore, and my mother's side of the family came with absolutely nothing, just one small suitcase, and that's all they were able to carry across the border. And they had to rebuild their lives from scratch. Many families were like that. But we were fortunate enough to have access to archival research of oral histories that had already been recorded in Bengal. So those were shared with us. So many of those oral histories are there. But because the museum is in Amritsar, and it's a long story, I won't get into it, but very briefly, literally had to go and beg for a building because there was there was nothing that we could do quickly enough. Already when we started 10 years ago, people were in the evening of their lives. My dad, who passed recently, was already in his 90s. I had to record him. We had to record all those people who were eyewitness to the partition. So what is the museum, we realized, going to be based on? It was going to be a people's museum. So it was a museum about love, loss, longing. It was a museum where the last gallery is called the Gallery of Hope. It was going to reach out to the people in Punjab and Bengal. And now you'll be happy to know that we also have included the lost homeland of Sindh. Indeed, it's the only place in the entire world where Sindhis can come and look at what their homes were like, what their language is like, the importance of Sindh, which we've forgotten now, Mohenjo-daro, all those areas which are now for many of us left behind in Pakistan. So we also set up a gallery, and all of this was done through donations. So I just want to say that our emphasis was not just on Punjab, not just on Bengal, albeit a lot of people do focus on Punjab because of the violence. In Bengal, it was spread over many, many decades, and it went on. The migration went on. So it wasn't as though it was over. In Punjab, it was much more brutal and faster. So therefore, there was a lot of writers, not us specifically, but a lot of writers did emphasize on that, therefore. And it was something that we were aware of when we began, that we have to try and focus on Bengal, and we were asked to do music in Bengal as well, but anyway, there was due to lots of reasons we couldn't do that. But we do have one in Delhi, we do have one in Amritsar, and we try and give that kind of emphasis on Sindhis as well.
Which is a good cue for me to get Bhavna in as well. Bhavna, you've written about your family from Karachi. Amidst the slew of partition stories that are coming out, how do you expect to stand out?
So the best thing about my memoir, which is chronicling my family legacy, the great-grandfather, grandfather, my parents, is that not many people know that even Gujaratis suffered the pain of partition. And not many people know that it is a specific community called Lohanas. The Lohanas are descendants of Raghuvanshi Ram and Lab and Kush. So we are the descendants of Lab. And slowly the name became Lohana, and then it became Lohana. And that's how My great grandfather went from Kutch to Karachi in 1836. And then he started doing business with his uncle, and slowly he realized that he was smarter than all, and he started independently. And my parents, as I said in my earlier lecture, were in school when my grandparents showed them to each other, and the wedding was fixed. My father was 18, my mother was 16. They got married, they lived in a large joint family of more than 30 people. And slowly, my grandfather realized that there were too many children, too many women, too many men, and we needed to separate out. And that's how the nuclear families happened. A lot of people ask me that what, as a film critic, made me write this book. I had been chronicling biopics and cinema analysis for so many decades. And even though I heard Karachi stories at the dining table from my older siblings, my uncles, my mamas, my masis, it was always something that happened to somebody. It was not yet touching my heart for somehow. Even though I interviewed the Yash Chopra, the Bian Chopra, Sunil Dutt, Rajendra Kumar, Manoj Kumar, and everybody had some reference to the partition and how they walked and they came here. Then one day I felt that out of the 8 siblings, 5 had passed away, and it was time for me, as the writer of the family, to chronicle the legacy of this wonderful story. Because for me, Karachi is not a neighboring city. I've been hearing stories of Karachi at all my uncle, aunts, and my home. For me, she's a lost sibling who I never saw. So I longed to go to Karachi. It never happened. It came close to me having an immigration stamp on my passport, but it was not meant to be. Then a celebrity friend of mine told me that you're writing this, but will people be interested? Because people are interested in stories of superstars and celebrities. And if you're writing a memoir about your family and the pain it went through, I said, I don't care. It is a story that touches me, it breaks me, and it is not about people and what they think. It is about documenting what happened to the Lohana community, to this particular family that was at the cusp of partition. It's about tradition, it is about custom, it's about cuisine, it is about festivals, the way it is celebrated, the family life, the joint families, and how all that continues to this day. Our food was influenced by Sindh, and there are a lot of dishes that we make which is so much like Sindhi. So Sindhi and Kutchi sound similar too. And the reason I felt distant earlier was because I am the eighth child of my parents, and I was born to my mother when she was in a menopause at 45. And my grandmother told my mother that be careful because my older sister was already born. Older sister, that is the seventh sibling, after coming to India. They left with 6 children, came to India, and then the seventh sibling was born after a decade. And she said, be careful because your fertility cycle is of 2 years. And my mother said, no, I am in menopause and you don't worry.
You live to tell the tale.
And 2 years later, she was pregnant. And the doctor once again advised that, you should go through an abortion because there were so many children. And the first time when the seventh sibling came, my parents were absolutely against it. And this time they did consider because, she was so weak and she was so feeble. She had, I think, no milk in her, and she ate all the kitchen remedies so that I would give up. But I had to tell the tale, so I had to give up.
And I think we should always remember that politics is a game and we should be smart people and not get played by the politicians. On that note, much was asked, much is still left, but I have to let it go because the siren has rung many times. Sam, Kishwar, and Bhavna, was lovely. Fantastic panel. Thank you
You were
very much.
fantastic. It's not fantastic.
The books will be outside, get them signed, and I'll do one last marketing pitch. My book is available in the bookstore. Thank you very much, everyone.
Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for this riveting session on the pains of partition. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Kishwar. Thank you, Bhavna. And thank you, Jyotsna. Kindly accept the token of respect, our star.